18.
Okay.
Didn't feel like it to me.
No, it
Yeah.
didn't. I know, when you said that, I'm like, wait, it didn't.
So we're talking about it. All right, so what do we like most about Jay's sermon?
Are we still recording? Okay.
You said yeah, right?
Yes.
I like that you did start out with Dr. Oz. I kind of like that. I think it was a good, after you read the text, and I thought that was a good introduction. And then also, I like that you had good eye contact, contact, and that you were moving, and you kind of had some hand movement, so it's good flow. And then also, I thought that you had some moments in there where it was funny when you talked about your weight. I mean, that was just fun, because I wasn't expecting that, so that was good. That was pretty good.
You tackled Jesus's mentioning the Gentiles in the text really well and really thoughtfully. I'm impressed too because I was totally stumped when I was writing this on whether to touch that, how to touch that. So that was really helpful to kind of carry. Also, I so appreciated you wrote a sermon that was very Christian oriented and very much in your voice, but you didn't throw Jewish tradition under the bus because that happens a lot when you're doing Jewish Gentile work. Yeah, you handled the research really well. You presented it really clearly, and you talked about it really carefully.
And I do like the way you did that, as far as, so the difference in relationship that the Jewish people had with God and the covenant relationship they had with God versus the Gentiles who didn't have that privilege or that status of having that relationship, and the difference that made in the way they see life, right? So if you have a relationship with God, God's always been there for you, kind of walk through that, 40 years in the wilderness, they were maintained as far as, their sandal, their clothing, and all of that. So it's like, so they had a foundation upon which they could live their lives and not be anxious for things because they had this history. And I like the way you put it, it's just a history with God. But then he also brought that over, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. But it's still coming. But then he also brought that over and talked about our history. Yeah. And so I thought that was a nice link. So, so
I like
what else?
to, hanging on that point, how you mentioned with the Gentiles, you said spiritual, and I thought it was kind of clever how you threw that spiritual connection in there too. The versus it just being ethnic.
Sure.
Yeah, I think tying into that too of not the fact that you didn't, somebody who, a group of people who didn't have that history with God, right? Just because they had to worry about these things wasn't the bad thing. It was when that became a consumption. And I think that you really made that point really clear, where it was something of just like, if I have to worry about it, then I'm going to act out.
Yeah.
As you talked about that with the swan. And I also wanted to mention that he didn't have your watch on.
Yes, courtesy of Stay
Yeah.
She told me beforehand. Otherwise, I did. Stay Shell got me.
Good job.
Retracted.
What'd you tell
Retracted comment to take his watch off.
Oh, okay.
Because I was like, I didn't hear.
Because it was like shaking it like
I didn't hear the clack.
He always flags it. He always takes it.
Yeah.
It probably.
So no longer a compliment to you. Compliment.
There it is.
Put it where it belongs.
You're not even preaching today, and you're getting good feedback.
Yeah. Look at that.
That's pretty good. It's pretty good.
She said.
Saved us.
She did.
Thank you, sir.
I know from like your context, I'm sorry guys, I'm really in pain, but I know from your context of preaching how different that was for you.
Yes.
Yes.
So it was cool though, like you did well. I mean,
Yes.
I know.
So different how?
Like he an old Baptist preacher.
Right.
I know Jay, I know his roots. And just from last time, like the way he preached, it was a completely different style. But it was just as effective.
Okay.
And like translating it to seminary,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like that was, you did a really good job.
And it
I
was
just
still, I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I just want to frame you in that because I know it's sometimes in seminary we don't really hear a lot of some of the preaching that we're used to here, and so I think it was cool that you tried to make the adjustments to It's a little bit
Mhm.
different.
And did you feel like you had to make an adjustment?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I didn't
right.
feel like I had to.
Okay.
I was thinking, really I don't typically read from a manuscript. So
Uh-huh.
it's much harder for me to do that.
And so why
and
did you do that?
Because I never do it and I wanted to challenge myself.
Okay.
So I felt like this was a safe environment
Oh, sure.
to do that.
Okay.
And I know I would typically not do that now. And I was like, let me try it and see like if I would really pursue that. If I were doing a senior sermon, I would not.
Okay.
I wouldn't, because for me, it's like hard to do that. I would not do it, but I wanted to try it, and I had already kind of said, like, when you first gave the assignment, I think I talked with, I was talking to Sean, and I was like, okay, so like, the first one, I'm not doing that. But the second one, I'm gonna do like a manuscript, just so I can say like, okay, I did it, you know, and maybe with more practice. Like after seeing Reverend Gina do it, I was like, you know what, let me try it. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm probably not
Reverend
gonna do
Gina.
it. It was very powerful. She really killed it, but she's probably been doing it for years too.
Right, and it's
That's
different
it,
for different
practice.
people.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I love the manuscript. I love it, but it's just hard for me to.
Yeah, it's out of your comfort zone.
And you don't have to.
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay.
What I did like is that your personality was still coming through.
Right.
even though it was
Yes,
very
right.
different than last
Your
time.
voice came through.
Yeah,
Yes.
very much so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I did miss, like, the experience of your preaching that we had last time. I did miss it a little bit. I was like
Okay.
waiting for it, and then when you go, I'm just gonna like cut this off sharp, I'm like, oh man.
Well, that's
I
it.
was like, oh man, 'cause I like it when he like.
I know, and then he's like, okay,
I had it closed and everything, but then I was like, no, because Dr. Mumford might be like, that sermon's 40 minutes. I told you 12 minutes.
Well, like we said, at 18, it didn't feel like it. So we
No.
felt
So I was like,
we were like, what? It was that
Yeah.
long.
I was just trying to, I had gone over time, but I need to work, that's something I really need to work on. is
yeah,
trying
because
to-
there's a way to still, so you can do an effective sermon.
Right.
And not have it take
So long.
40 minutes.
Right.
Right. I'm just saying. So there's a balance.
There is a way. Yes, I need to work on that. Please don't let me down.
I know. It's like, the only way I can really preach, I need an hour.
I need a
Right.
20-minute warm up.
That intro.
Yeah.
Right. TM.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I need to figure that out.
Mhm. Yeah, you can do that. You're a smart guy. So what else? Anything else that we liked about Jay's sermon?
I'm just so stuck on the Gentiles thing.
Mhm.
Because I felt the same way.
Yeah.
Like, when I was reading it, I was like, oh, I don't even know how to deal with this. And, like, the modern issues of that, too, that, like, we are now Gentiles. And so how do we talk about Gentiles being them? But not in the context of this. So
Correct.
it's just so messy. And I'm just really appreciative that you went there and handled it
Yeah.
clearly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is so tricky, and
Yeah.
it really, like, it made perfect sense to me. It didn't feel like you were trampling on anything, or
Right.
either
Right.
way. Like, you made the understandings of these two groups just like make sense on so many levels, not just one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was like, very impressed.
Mhm.
And thinking of them differently. And differently than we usually talk about them here.
Yes.
Right.
Which I
Yes.
appreciate.
Yeah.
I think too, you talked about we all have a history, and you touched on that, and that was important because our backgrounds are so different
Yeah.
as an audience in
Yeah.
seminary. So that, you did it in such a way where everyone, I think, felt included. Like there wasn't really somebody who doesn't have, I mean, we all have a history, however we come to the text.
Makes
so.
it different. but-
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
different, but I felt like it was just right for the audience.
Mhm. And so depending on where you did the sermon, if you did it in another context, you could lean into that particular history at that point. Like, you know, what is
Yeah.
everybody has a history with God. So in African American context, you can highlight what is this history that we have as a people with God. And in some other ethnic communities, we talk about what is our history, you know, with God. So that can be rich, you know, and vary depending on your context. All right, anything else you want to highlight? Okay, so I agree with everything that's been said. I liked, starting off with Dr. Oz. It's interesting, he's an interesting guy. I was like, dang, he's been doing this for years. But, his statement that humans are wired to worry. So it's like, wow, so is that true? And that worry is not necessarily negative. So it was an interesting way to start, to kind of thinking about worry, anxiety, and all of that in our context today. So like that, and then you talked about, let's say, you gave us some examples of, the types of things that can be all-consuming, as far as, we should seek counseling about some things. But also you talked about examples like bills and relationships or some of those things that we worry about. And I like that you talked about that. I liked that you went to Jesus and talked about that, the way this text has been traditionally interpreted, that Jesus suggests that worries can be eliminated by seeking the kingdom. So you talked about that. You did a little work with worry, anxiety, and those types of things. But then when you talked about Gentiles in particular, just what everybody has been saying, to me that was kind of the core of what you did with this text that sets it apart, right? So just talking about the fact that traditionally Gentiles are stated in the text, they just miss the whole mark of righteousness, right? So they are the heathens, and that's the way it's typically been read and preached. But then you didn't even say, but I have a different way of looking at the text. You just said it. Let's talk about the difference in relationships between the Gentiles and the people of the Jewish folk, and the difference that makes. So whether you have a relationship with God or not have a relationship with God, when you have a covenant with God, when you don't. So I just really liked saying again what you did there. I think you talked about also, that were talked about that we all have desires for food and clothing. And does Jesus really mean that these desires are not legitimate? In your example of food, I like food, so he talks about, he's gonna say obviously because of my weight. He's like, oh, that was a little levity there, thank you so much. So I like what you did there, but you were able to do that and kind of bring us all in to the acknowledgement that there is worry, and that we do have worry in our lives, but that's not what the focus is in this text. So I think you did a lot of good stuff in here, and I liked your body language, the way you looked at us, even with using the manuscript, you interacted with us. So I didn't feel like you were, separate and apart and just not engaged with us at all. The engagement was there, maybe to a different degree than, without the manuscript, but you were still engaged. And I thought, so all of that still worked well. So a lot of good stuff. And again, I really appreciate, like you and Annika, having us think about this text very differently, right? So same text, I love this text, or, very similar, so maybe emphasizing different aspects of the text, but helping us to think about it in a very, very different way, and that's a good thing. So love that. So thank you very much. So how could it have been even better?
I like you better without a manuscript.
Okay.
Yeah. You just, so much more of you just comes
Yep.
through. And it felt like when you were trying to go back to your manuscript, the fire died a little bit for me. And the things you were saying were so well crafted, and you clearly wrote a really great manuscript, but it just, that spark, it wasn't quite there.
Mm-hmm. And it's okay to be able to capture some of those thoughts. So one of the advantages of a manuscript is that you have all your phrasing, you have everything and, you know, it's just scripted, and so all the words you thought about carefully, and you put them in order, you know, they're there. And so the fear in going from a manuscript to something else, like an outline, is that you're gonna lose some of that distinctive types of phrasing. But you don't necessarily have to, because you can make sure that even in a detailed outline, that you can highlight for yourself if there are particular phrases that you don't want to miss, right? You want to capture the thoughts and have a flow, but if there's some phrasing that you want to make sure you still highlight, then you can still have that there, but still be able to look up and interact with the congregation. So there are ways to do that, so to free yourself, you know, from doing that. So last time, did you have an outline, or what did you have?
Last
Did you have
time,
anything?
I just basically read the text, but it was like the manuscript, but I didn't look at it. I
Okay.
typically, when I preach, I typically don't. I just take my Bible up there. But I've written out a manuscript
Sure.
beforehand, and
Right, but
I've
it's-
gone through in my mind and
internalized.
rehearsed it. Yeah, and I sit with it. And so
Right.
as I'm
Nice.
preaching,
Mhm.
I'm going through like more of an outline in my
Sure,
head.
okay.
But the thing is that I would say with this particular situation, and ultimately with like doing a senior sermon, I do think your audience, I don't think you should change how you preach.
No.
But also, I think it would be good to throw in, and I didn't really do as much of it as I would have liked in this particular manuscript, some maybe theological terms, some references to some scholars and different things like that. Now, when that happens for me, sometimes it's easier for me to like look and see the name or look and see, you know, because to me, for me, I don't want to forget or I don't want to misrepresent.
Right.
So I think that's why I was like, okay, well, let me try and see how I can go in between. But the more I think about it, I might just be one of those people who just doesn't, like you said, Kate, need to do that. I mean, I need to figure out a way to.
Right. So you can just
Yeah,
have
talking about just those
you
key
can have a
things
sheet
or
with
phrases you
your,
need.
Right.
bullet points
But-
or something,
Yeah.
and then just go.
You gotta let
Yeah.
the spirit preach.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Actually, to that end, you had a phrase in this one, if we pursue God's justice, we may find it. Which I thought that was the close. Like, I thought that was the call. I thought that was the, you know, this is the takeaway, this is the challenge. All that to say, if you chose either to do manuscripts in the future, or if you chose to get those phrases and place those phrases, I think maybe a little intentionality would let you use those really powerful statements at the most powerful places.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. So how do you get that? And so maybe having, you know, one sheet with the phrases you don't want to lose,
Okay.
right? In an order, and just kind of, you know, rehearse that at home so you can have a flow and you kind of go through it. But then that also makes you open to the working of the Spirit as well, right? So you're not so confined that the Spirit has no place in it. But then you're not so restricted, right? That you know you can't enjoy the moment and that kind of thing. So I think that's good. Yeah. What else?
I agree with the, what everybody has said with the manuscript piece, because it did feel a little, there was some resistance, I feel,
Okay.
that came through with the manuscript versus like your personality coming out and feeling a little bit more free with it.
Okay.
So, but I get you, because I was kind of the same way with trying to figure out between the two, because this is a space to kind of do that in. So I really get that, but I do think more could have came out if you
Okay.
hadn't been so tied to it. And I think you can kind of, your audience could kind of see that,
Okay.
especially because we know your personality and stuff. But I wanted a little bit more expounding when it came to the righteousness piece and like what that looks like. Because I think a lot of times when we preach righteousness, it's like, yeah, and you talked about it a little bit, but I would like that more expounded in a little bit more practical terms. You talk about seeking justice, but you know, like what does that look like? You know, like just trying to expound on that a little bit more.
Mm.
So,
Yes.
The justice and the righteousness.
I need to, yes.
I can do that.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, do any of your mentors or pastors that you grew up with, do any of them use manuscripts, or do they all do notes?
I think like most of them now don't. Like most of them don't use notes, they don't do manuscripts. They may write one. And there's like one that uses a manuscript. But they are so fluent with it that like you can't even tell that they're actually like, I don't know how they do this, whether they have like 10 eyes or what, but they're actually like reading it, but they look like they're looking at you
Yeah.
the whole time. Like I'm looking for
Oh, please, oh, okay.
I think my fat feet were breaking the, so we'll just put our feet on the floor. But yes, that's what I'll do.
Yes,
So-
okay, yeah.
But yes, I do have like one, but most of them don't.
Okay.
So
Mm.
I think that's possibly why
Yeah,
I
no,
appreciate what I do.
I was just curious, because most people, myself included, the format they're most comfortable with is the format they've seen modeled most
Mhm.
often, so.
Mhm. That's a good point. Now, so there was, in the text, it seems like, in the sermon, it seemed like, so that you came to a point and then you would stop, and it didn't kind of come
Right.
together.
Yes.
And it's like, so I wanted it to kind of culminate, if you will. So there were, I heard several different themes going on. And so what I wanted you to have is kind of a little bit more focused, because you talked about the reign of God, the kingdom of God. We talked about justice, we talked about the word, we talked about the Gentiles and their covenant relationship with God. So what I wanted to happen is, or somehow all this to come together with a central theme,
Right.
and that did not happen. And so that would be my critique. So it's like, so how would all of this kind of come together? If you kind of read this text, what do you want us to take away? Because I can name several different things I take away, which, we can probably do that anyway. But is there a central theme for this message that kind of holds it all together, so that your talk about anxiety and worry and righteousness and the rain, all that kind of comes together, to come together under our a theme of we should seek the reign of God, and in the reign of God, we're not anxious about things, so just how does it kind of come together? So that's what
I want, if I can ask you, because at the end of the 2-hour sermon, I was trying to at the very end, kind of bring that idea of the reason why, Jesus is giving this, well, not the reason, he's giving this sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
He's talking to this Jewish audience, and he is conveying to them that because of your history, in so many words, I am representing the same power that caused you to not have to worry then in the Hebrew Bible. And I have that same presence now. So you have a history so that you don't have to be engulfed as, say, a Gentile would.
Okay.
And trying to convey that pursuit of the reign of God allows that freedom to exist.
Sure.
Where you no longer then have to, because of my relationship and the history that I have, no matter where I find myself, I'm able to, eliminate some of the negative words. So that was how I was trying to tie it all together.
Right. So
And
it
even
was
in
the
that might seem
history
complicated.
piece.
Right.
Right.
And that's how I ended up focusing on the history, but I agree with you, translated that, especially at the point when I was like, oh my gosh, I'm probably at 40 minutes. How do I, so how would you effectively How would you tie those together in a 12?
Just like you said, if you talk about this text and that when Jesus uses these words about be anxious for nothing, then just start immediately talking about how Jesus is this connection between the history that the Jewish people had with God and their future, right? And so if God did all of this in the past and they didn't have to be anxious, then surely for your future you don't have to be anxious for anything, and just work both of them. So bring it in the history, talk about how they don't have to be anxious in the future. And if you want to say something to us about, just like the Jewish people had a history and don't have to worry about their future, we too don't have to worry about our future, which is what Jesus is talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, so that could work. Right, yeah. And you can do it probably some other ways too, but that's one way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fun text.
Okay.
Yeah. So other thing, anything else? Yeah. It's funny, so many people in the class, I was reading through some sermons, read all the exegetical papers and reading through the sermons. They're like, there are like about at least 7 people preaching this text. And so it was kind of interesting. And different takes. So I was just anxious. I'm definitely watching all these and like, okay, each person has a different way of approaching this text, which is kind of neat. Yeah. All right, so why don't we take a break, come back and just chat for a bit about anything you may want to talk about as far as preaching, and we can go from there. Sounds good. 10 minutes.